Welcome to Control Alt Dev, the podcast where we talk AI, software, tech systems, and staying sane while scaling our businesses.
I'm Paul from Green Gorilla Apps.
And I'm Sean from Just Applications. And last week was a busy one, but a productive one. I finalised Paul and sent that proposal out for the Insta 360 camera project. So that was delivered on time as promised, and just waiting for some feedback on that. Always a good feeling, of course, when everything runs smoothly. In addition to that, we wrapped up a couple of website proposals for potential new clients. I've had several really productive meetings focused on the InkGin augmented reality app, which is exploring, Paul, just how to market the tattoo application to tattoo artists, starting locally with those in Birmingham. A lot of potential there, especially with the creative possibilities of AR and what that can bring to the industry, really. And of course, this weekend was a scorching one, wasn't it? And Father's Day on Sunday. Did you get thoroughly spoilt, Paul?
I did get spoiled. I ended up cooking breakfast though for everybody. So we had my in-laws over, which was lovely. And we sat in the garden because it was nice weather. So
wasn't it?
That was really good.
Well, as always, thank you for tuning in and supporting our podcast, everyone. Just a gentle reminder, everything we share is based on our own experiences. We're not claiming to have all the answers, but we're here to be open, honest, and hopefully helpful. If anything we've talked about today resonates with you or sparks questions, ideas, or even challenges, we'd generally love to hear from you. Drop us a message, share your thoughts, or let us know what topics you'd like us to cover next. So today, Paul, I want to talk about turning your website into a lead generation machine.
So Sean, let's kick things off with your content strategy. You mentioned things have evolved significantly, over time. What was your starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. Initially, we were focusing on a very broad set of short tail search terms, things like application development, mobile application development, and software development. These came from a good friend of mine, Steve Feeney at Essential Marketing, who looked at the Just Applications website and literally said, you're not actually going after the keywords that you should be on your website, which seems absolutely crazy, but that was the truth. So the logic was based on monthly search volume alone, but it didn't account for the search intent.
Okay, so if you were getting traffic, but not the right traffic, is that correct?
Exactly. So the traffic we've got was too general. Some of it was around housing development or general mobile user-related content. So we were ranking, but the ranking of the actual keywords we're after was poor. So yes, high visibility in terms of traffic, but not the traffic that you wanted.
Okay, so what did you do to pivot and fix that?
So in December 2024, we planned our calendar for 2025, what blogs we were going to do, podcast topics, which obviously here we are today. It was ambitious, but the goal was to map everything around getting more leads. We adopted a traffic light system to prioritize keywords, green for mission critical, and red for low impact.
Okay, so you also started leveraging long tail keywords, is that right?
Yeah, because the search intent is far stronger in our industry. So, when you're looking at long tail keywords, which is 3 or 4 keywords, you've got more chance to get traction. So we looked at old content because we're almost 22 years now in business.
Yeah.
So some was underperforming, some was poorly optimized, some wasn't relevant now, which is typical, isn't it? You've had a website that's been growing forever and a day, and you probably aren't aware of what you've actually got on your website. And how true is that? Now, I know you can't say that, Paul, because we've just developed your new website. But if it was a website that was as old as ours, it's 22 years, you're going to have a lot of blog content that it's very, very old. And some of that is just not relevant. And of course, that's not good for SEO.
Okay, so what mistakes did you spot in your earlier approaches?
Yeah, so we made the classic mistakes of asking our sales team to write keywords or what they thought they were the main keywords, focusing on blog posts, but that didn't work. So now we focus on case studies and common customer questions. If content feels forced on a website page, it just won't rank. And more importantly, it won't work and it won't convert.
Okay, so how often are you actually publishing?
So at first, like in January, sporadically. Then we moved on to doing at least 1 or 2 pages per week. So that might be keyword relevance on a page. It might be a case study to back that up. So yeah, using like AI for discovery in terms of what can we actually, what others are doing well, in our industry, and then seeing how we can improve our visibility with that content.
Yeah, and I guess one of the problems in our industry is, which is a good problem because it shows we respect privacy, but is working under NDA on a lot of business critical systems. How do you overcome that in the content that you produce?
Yeah, and it's tricky, isn't it? We know this. Sometimes we create case studies or use phrasing. So we do sort of label some of our projects up and say that they're NDA assigned. So we're not going to really, maybe we might even not show. It's difficult. You don't really want to not show screenshots. You want to show as much as you can. So we're quite fortunate because we've built 3 of our own systems.
Yes.
But where possible, yes, we'll ask the customer if we could drop in a case study and leave some screenshots. If we can't, we'll just say that this particular project was based on this. And obviously then it was NDA assigned. So we might also change the UIA screenshots, as I say. We never mention the company. It's a workaround, but it allows us still to demonstrate authority and trust. And it's something that I've been discussing with you, Paul, that I think you said you've done over 150 projects.
Yeah.
But what you really need to do, because you've got a hell of a lot of case studies, haven't you?
Yeah.
And you need to get those down, because we know that the business to business relationship from someone looking for potentially a software agency like ours to completing or starting the project could be a year, could be 2 years, could be longer. And if you've got some sort of experience in that industry, let's say logistics, for example, you've written some applications to enable the logistics label to be created, all the tracking information going back to a third-party application like eBay or Amazon to say here's the tracking information for the customer. If you've got that experience, it goes a long way, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think what you've touched on as well is trust, isn't it? Like you've referenced, like we've done a recent piece of work where we've gone, oh my days, we've done over 150 projects. And then the reason I was a bit flippant in my response earlier is we've got 2 case studies on our website, and talking to you, I know how much you're proactively publishing case studies and doing all this great work. And we're layers behind you. We're a bit like the house builder who builds amazing new properties, but actually doesn't bother hanging their internal doors because they're so busy at home. They're like, we feel like that. So we're just only entering into this content creation journey. But like you said, trust is everything. So how have you kind of, I guess, taken the trust element and pioneered with that really and made it key in B2B sales, I guess is the question.
The B2B audience is obviously a more senior one. They need proof, as you rightly say. The security, information, the experience, all those things matter. Obviously, you've been 13 years in business. We've been, as I say, a little over 20 years, 22 years. That's all relevant. That's all good. But you've got to have case studies that almost show off what you do. Now, as I say, we are fortunate. We've got 3 systems, SaaS applications that we sell. But even that, we can't keep going on about the same systems. If we are doing custom application development, which is one of the long tail keywords that I was looking at last week, yes, we've got to make sure that page has got the right amounts of content, the keywords, H1 tags, etc. But it's also got to have some relevance in terms of what have we done? Can we support that evidence? And that's where the ranking factor comes in with Google as well, because you've got things like snippets, and we'll get onto that in a minute, but obviously those are key questions that B2B potential visitor might be asking that you need to answer. And I think that the snippets really do they really do help with the ranking of the page, because they are really the gold in terms of that you understand the subject matter is what I'm trying to get to there.
Yeah, so you've talked a bit, at the start of this conversation has really been around the content strategy, hasn't it? It's like what to put onto the website. What you're touching on now is like how to technically optimize it. So do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so obviously it's changed, and the algorithm, certainly for Google and Bing, they're changing all the time. But there is a checklist. That's ready available on AI. You can ask it for what you require, but it is going to be like title tags, H1 header tags, body content, internal link building. This is what we focus on for the trust signals like the project security standards. In the past, people bought dodgy backlinks, but now it's all relevant. It's all about the relevance and trustworthiness of what you're putting out there. And that's what the algorithm's looking at.
So you've touched on, and you're obviously a big fan of like featured snippets. So do you want to just elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I mentioned it just previously, but it really is, it's the question and answers. So if we're looking at the long tail keywords of custom application development, so it'll be things like how much does it cost to build an application? That's probably the most common thing we get asked, isn't it, Paul? Does it include iOS and Android on the mobile app side of it? Because obviously you can just do the one. Do I own the source code once you've completed the project? These are sort of like the common questions. And snippets are powerful. They do take effort. They can take about a year to get traction once you've actually adopted them. But we do now track them weekly, and we compare them using tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush.
Okay, wow. I mean, we're only embarking at the very few first months, I guess, of our content strategy, but we've used, which is, I think, what you're talking about with snippets in terms of the technology kind of packaging of it. We've used They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. I don't know if anybody who's listening is aware of that book, but that's an amazing kind of framework to deliver exactly what you said in terms of answer the questions that the clients, the prospects are actually want to know. Don't just write a blog about, and we've been guilty of this, and we've had a marketing meeting today, literally on this thing where we did an automation playbook on a subject. And whilst it was good and we got people going, oh, that was an interesting subject, I've never once had a sales meeting where someone's brought it up. And we're trying to transition a lot more to exactly what you're talking about, is what is the questions that the person visiting the website will actually have. So you've got that strategy then. So then you've created this keyword map that you've described, and you've got an internal linking strategy. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so we map keywords like mobile application development to specific pillar pages. Every time that term comes up, we link back to that same core page. Don't over egg that. Obviously once per page, once per article is enough. But over time, this signals to Google that this is an authoritative piece of content. But it's very important. If you go on the bottom of my website, and obviously this is something you can do at the end of this podcast, we'll do it right now, you'll see that the keywords that we're going after are appearing at the bottom of the footer. So we're making Google aware that this is key page content. Now that, obviously, as I said before, you can write very authoritative content in there, but back it up with case studies. If you haven't got case studies, now as I said to you, Paul, it's not a case of making it up, but it's a case of you've built those projects before, you're well aware of what you did for those projects. You've just got to do a little bit of a different spin on it if you cannot mention the company or the project title. That's all it is. Because people are aware that, that NDAs are important. They're protecting that customer's hard work. But at the same time, you need to talk about it because you were the developers. You were the ones that actually brought that to life. And that's very, very important, again, for the trust and the authoritative part of this. Because once it starts working, this has been working for us, and we've been doing this since January now, we're getting around about 2 or 3 leads a week, which, in our industry, that's pretty good, and that's UK
That's
wide.
really good.
Yeah, it's UK wide. And that's why I'm saying to you, we need to start doing it on the GGA website, because you can't just have a website where it says, yes, we're software developers, please call us. Those days, as most people are aware, they're long gone. It has to be, most people nowadays now, if you and I turned up at an exhibition and we put our green Gorilla flag up and just applications, how many people come along and talk to you nowadays? People just walk past you now. They probably look at the name of the company GGA, and then start searching on their phone to find out all about you. People don't put their hands up anymore and say, "Tell us about your company. Tell us what you do." So it's really frustrating, but that's the world we're in.
And I think what you're also describing in an earlier comment was about how content not only needs to be created regularly, but the irrelevance factor. So I assume that that's like an annual content audit that you're doing. So how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got 7 websites, Paul, because you have to realise that every single SaaS application has its own website. So it is a massive job. But yes, we compile all the content, we check what's still relevant, and we see what can be updated and identify SEO quick wins. And I'm even actually looking at right now taking away the date and time aspect, because most of us are using WordPress or something similar. But do we actually need to have a date and time stamp against that blog article? Why not update that content, make it relevant? If you need to delete it and then redirect the link. But where you can, just update that content, because that way then, if it is date specific, like some of the AI stuff that you and I talk about, it is date specific when they release a certain new version of OpenAI or Copilot, etc. Yes, that makes sense. But where you don't need to be date specific, don't mention it.
So like business strategy stuff.
Absolutely.
So things that's conceptual rather than like specifically referencing a technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I guess the ultimate question when anyone's thinking about doing all this, because like you've described, it's a lot of work. How long do you typically see that it takes to get any results from this?
So I was quite surprised at how quickly we got results. I foresaw this taking at least a year plus. But within, as I say, we adopted the strategy January, sort of the first week of January, and we've had 158% increase in web traffic, and that's authoritative. That's traffic we do want, not the traffic we didn't want. 233% more featured snippet related traffic. And as I say, we're getting about 2 to 3 qualified leads a week now compared to 0 in 2024. So the engagement is much higher. They talk about engagement now in Google Analytics. You don't really hear bounce rate for people like the old fossils like me that call it bounce rate, but the bounce rate has certainly dropped, which is absolutely fantastic.
And then what have you seen as the impact on like the customer journey or the prospect journey? How's that changed over your years of doing this?
So I think it's going back to that analogy of what I just said about the exhibition stand. People are way more anonymous now. They research a lot now before they talk. They don't just walk up to you and say, "What do you do?" They'll Google. They'll search on Microsoft Edge. Your content has to speak before they're ready to speak to you. That's the power of content-driven lead gen.
That's a great phrase.
Yeah,
I might nick that. That's brilliant. I mean, we've covered a lot today, from like keyword intent to internal linking and snippets, and even how like NDAs affect content, which was really insightful for me. So thank you very much for walking us through that, Sean.
Yeah, no worries. As I say, Paul, we're going to do it with Green Gorilla Apps as well. So that's going to be me looking after your site as well, because it's more important. Just as important as it is for just applications, it's equally important to get your website up and running, because you're doing the networking, you're doing the really what I call the hard stuff. This is the easy stuff. It's not actually. Yes, there's a lot of work. Yes, absolutely agree with you. Shed loads of work to do, unfortunately, but it is how do you eat an elephant, and you've got to do it slowly. You can't expect to have all this done in a week or 2 days, 3 days. It's a bit like our podcast, isn't it? What are we doing? We're starting to bang out podcast after podcast after podcast. But that's just the nature of the beast. You've got to research this information, you've got to do your homework. And even when you get to, hopefully, where we need to get to, which is the 1 to 2 spots on the search engines, you can't sort of leave it there, because your competitors, perhaps after this podcast now, will identify how they can get higher up. So you've always got to be looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, that was absolutely brilliant. And next week, I think we're going to be talking deeper on the subject of the AI brain, and like
Absolutely.
how we can give your projects memory, and automate answers and onboard new team members faster as well. So yeah, I think if you're interested in what we've talked about so far in these first few episodes and you'd like to know more, then you can subscribe and share this podcast. If you've got any questions, you can contact us, and we're always keen on collecting feedback and improving this, like Sean said, one episode at a time, really.
Absolutely. So thanks again for tuning in, and stay tuned, and see you next time.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.